welcome to the first episode of Get Input. My name is Myburgh.
And I'm Cory. We are game development lecturers in South Africa. And Myburgh, what is Get.Input? What is this show?
So basically what we want to do is we want to explore game development, the industry of game development and the process of making games. And basically we just want to cover the topics related to creating games, get people a little interested in it, that kind of stuff.
What's our first topic? What should we start with?
So what I've been thinking is emergence. It's a topic that's been on my mind for quite a while now. Emergence. What is emergence?
Emergence is to emerge, I believe.
It's when something comes up.
So emergent, but you're talking about emergent gameplay specifically, right?
Yeah, emergent gameplay.
As opposed to immersive gameplay.
Yeah.
So immersive gameplay is like when you're really, really involved in a world or a game and to the point where you don't really notice what else is happening around you. But emergent gameplay is, maybe,
basically in Far Cry, where you go to a camp and you look at it with your binoculars and you see a tiger attacking the enemies. That's emergent gameplay. It's basically where systems from a game are aware of each other and can interact with each other in different ways. My best example of emergent gameplay, though.
Not just like a random event, though. Not necessarily just like random world events. So you're talking specifically about the ways that things interact unexpectedly.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, like the tiger is aware of the enemies and the enemies are aware of the tiger, but neither are aware of you at the moment. So they kind of just playing out their roles naturally. And if you come into the fray, like they have to basically decide what their targets are and that kind of thing. So it's basically just the systems of the game being able to interact with each other.
Because I've always thought of it as the part where you use the structure of the game to make your own fun. Kind of. Like you use the existing systems and the tools that the game gives you, and then you combine them and make your own fun. And it's basically that. Well, but the thing is, those systems need to be able to communicate with each other, and I think that's the big thing about it. Sorry, you were going to say what's one of your favorite examples of emergent gameplay? So,
well, that whole thing about Far Cry 3 where the tiger attacks. One of my favorite moments was when I was I was like sitting on a hill with my binoculars and I was like scoping out the area, and this was like my first camp that I attacked. But as I was scoping it out, a buffalo comes in from behind me and like whacks me into the camp. It gave me a huge fright because it just like hits you from behind. I didn't know it's going to be a scary game. And then suddenly there's buffaloes like running around inside of the encampment, also just like ramming into everyone.
Yeah.
It sees. But it was so unexpected because at that point I just expected it to be a shooter.
Yeah. Have you played? Did you play Blood Dragon? Did you play Far Cry Blood Dragon?
I so badly want to.
Oh, okay, because that one is basically Far Cry 3 just on steroids, and they use the same like animals and skins and everything, except that they make like I think it's the Komodo dragons. They make them extra large, and then they have like dinosaurs and stuff. And literally part of the strategy is you can just open the gates of these complexes and let the dinosaurs in, and the dinosaurs will kill the scientists for you.
Yeah, that's a great part of it. But I think there's also a limit to emergent gameplay, right? Because how far can one AI interacting with other AI go, right?
But I don't think it's just AI. Like, I think it's important what you were talking about of the interaction of systems within the game. So I've been playing Dragon Age Inquisition recently because I never got around to it back in the day, and it was on sale at Christmas. So I've gotten into that, but directly before this, I was playing The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and that is like an incredible game in the fact that they give you so many tools and skills, but you get them all right in the beginning. Like, you don't have to really unlock them. You kind of get them all in the beginning, and they all interact with each other. So when I started playing Dragon Age Inquisition, it suddenly felt really empty to me because you only have a few systems. Like, you can talk to this person, you can attack this person, When you're in the open world, you can gather resources, and like that's it. Like you can't. Whereas in Breath of the Wild, you can climb up on top of the tree, and then you can jump down from the tree, and then you can craft something. And so it's like it's that interaction. So the world started feeling really empty to me in Dragon Age because you have these different actions, but like they're kind of binary. Like I can talk to the person or attack the person, but there's not really anything interesting I can do by combining those. Like I can't attack them and then talk to them. They're not going to really have anything different to say, you know? So, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, that's an amazing emergent gameplay.
So that's one of the things though, like the difficulty that comes with having a whole lot of choice, right? If you think about something like a stealth game, like Splinter Cell or what's it called, Metal Gear, where you've got tons of options on how to deal with an enemy AI.
Yeah, but
most of the time it boils down to you just going in and taking them out hand to hand.
Yeah, are you killing them loud or are you killing them quiet?
Yeah. And it all boils down to that, because like every single Splinter Cell that I play, I try to play as a ghost. So then I don't actually end up using my tools because they're just too noisy.
Yeah.
So I just end up going the hand-to-hand route every single time. So is there actually anything to gain from emergent gameplay? Because yes, it's cool. It's really cool that the systems can interact with each other. But if you do it, you kind of have to force those scenarios out instead of just hoping that the player ends up. It kind of has to be.
Well, I think that's the difficult part about game design is you can't account for everything that the player is going to do or try. And that's the whole point of emergent gameplay is it emerges from the game. Like it's something that the players and the systems sort of develop organically without the designer like bashing you over the head of like, dude, like I feel like there's some games that try and force you to have emergent gameplay. Whereas there's some games that just kind of gently introduce it to you. Like, okay, going back to Breath of the Wild. So you have kind of like this stasis power where you can freeze objects and then you can apply force to them. And then when it's unfrozen, that thing will like fly off in the distance. You also have a magnetic power where you can kind of manipulate metal objects and stuff. But it's not until a little bit, unless you experiment a lot, it's not until like later in the game that you realize you can actually combine these. Like you have bombs, but you have two different bombs. And it took me a while to figure out that, I can actually switch between them and lay out two different types of bombs and then trigger them at different times. And the way they introduce that to you is actually through the puzzles in the game. So that was interesting to me that they give you these skills and you're kind of free to solve these puzzles in any way you want. And there's a few times where I did something and I'm like, I don't think that's how they wanted me to do it. But because of the systems that they created, it doesn't feel like I'm cheating because it doesn't feel like I broke the rules. I just didn't do it how they expected me to do it or something like that.
Just use a different tool set.
Yeah, so it's all about these stacking tool sets, I think. They combine together rather than just I can use this one or I can use this one kind of. But
yeah. Because it's calling back on that thing of you don't really know what your player is going to do. One of my favorite videos from Red Dead Redemption 2 was literally a guy was like lying on the floor and the player was trying to intimidate the person. So he pointed his gun up and shot. And then a bird fell out of the sky and hit the ground. So the thing is, like, what are the odds of that happening? Like, was that just a developer that's like faking emergence?
Oh, that's a good question.
They can say there's a really good chance that, or you can say like you've got a 1 in 100 time chance that if you shoot a gun into the air,
a bird will fall down.
Just gonna fall out.
Or did it just like actually happen within the world? Yeah. Exactly. Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah.
Because that's one of those things. Is like you can fake emergence, but like real emergence is like when the player actively is interacting with the systems.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes developers will try and like push emergence with the achievements. Like if you ever go through and like I'm a nerd, so I sometimes like read the achievements of and that's when there'll be like almost these hidden mini games within the game of like beat this person with a banana 10 times or something like that, or like so that's what I feel like they're kind of trying to hint, that there's emergent gameplay to be found, but again, you can't actually force a player into it. It's really you just have to go with it. Like, and I think in Portal, like Portal 2 especially, I ended up making a lot of my own rules and challenges, and probably making the game more difficult than it needed to be, just because I wanted to experiment,
Yeah.
So
Have you ever had a challenge that you made in Portal 2 actually get you to the solution? That was not supposed to be?
I don't think so. Not particularly, because that's a pretty tightly designed game. Yeah. There's pretty much a one-way route to that. But I do remember trying a lot of, like, I was like, I don't want to send it through the portal. I want to bounce it off the wall,
Have you ever seen, like, Portal 1 speedruns?
Speedruns? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
No.
That's crazy. It's like, you think that Portal 1 is a really tightly designed game as well, until you see the speedruns of it, and then you just see people like doing things that are completely like, there's like entire levels that they've managed to skip by placing like smart portal placement and stuff. It's really interesting.
What? I didn't know. I didn't know that was really a thing.
Cool because the entirety of Portal 1 takes about an hour to complete, right?
Yeah.
The one that I saw, it was quite a few years back, but it was, I think, 14 minutes. And it's ridiculous. No map clipping. They like still went through every single level.
Dang.
It's just they were very smart about how they dealt with and that was one of the emergent things was speedrunning
in general is emergent gameplay. Like that's that speedrunning as a genre of gameplay. That's not a game genre. That's a gameplay genre, right? And like that's a perfect example of emergent gameplay. Is the fact that players are like, how fast can I do this? And
that's true.
We've made an entire like subgenre of gameplay.
And it's because of the way that the mechanics are made. Because one of the things that speedrunner did a lot was utilize the momentum mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not in the way that the developers planned, but it still exists and it still worked. It wasn't like breaking the game. It was just using the mechanics in the ways that the developers weren't able to foresee.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, have you seen Bug Snacks?
I have seen some footage of it. I haven't played it yet, unfortunately, but I really want to. It looks really cute.
I would recommend it. It's pretty interesting. I recently watched a NoClip documentary about it, like when they talked about creating the snacks. I don't know if anyone's watching this video and is like, what's Bug Snacks? It's basically Pokemon mixed with Monster Hunter in a sense.
And very cutesy, yeah.
Yeah, you're not fighting. You're basically figuring out these little puzzles on how to use certain bug snacks to draw out other bug snacks in order to capture them.
So like the premise is like you eat something and then you take on the characteristics of whatever the thing was that you ate, right?
Well, no, that's the you basically feed the snacks to other people and then they get like their limbs replaced.
Oh,
but you need to catch the things. So one of the big examples in the beginning of the game is you get a burger which runs around and it's kind of stupid. But it really loves tomato sauce. So if there's tomato sauce, it will like run at it and like bump into anything in its way.
Okay.
So then there's another bug that likes hiding in a bush. So basically you have to throw tomato sauce onto the bush.
So that it runs into the bush. And then
and smacks the other guy out. So it's all about like the way that these bugs have.
So like chaining them together.
And it's a really cool thing because all of those things can happen naturally. But one of the things that the designer of the game said was all of these things were happening outside of the player's view. So then they'd normally feel like they'd be missing out on something or they'd just completely just miss it. They wouldn't even realize that something happened. So one of the big things was to only allow that emergent gameplay to come through so all of those mechanics can interact with each other, but
if the player's missing it
until the
Yeah, if the player's missing it, then there's no point because then it's not adding any benefit to the game. So you have to like. So I'm guessing they like restricted it to only happening when it was in view.
Well, actually, it was just about the player creates the emergence. So.
Oh, okay, okay. So instead of having happening randomly, it has to have player intention behind it.
Exactly.
Okay, that's kind of cool.
And I think that's a really cool way of doing it because.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you lose out then on the kind of the discovery of sometimes there's games where you watch something happen in the world and then you're like, oh, I guess I can do that too. So you kind of lose out on the discovery of watching that, but you do gain then the more of a sense of satisfaction of actually completing and learning something, or like, oh, I figured that out by myself.
Yeah.
Games are all about making you feel special, like you figured it out. Congratulations. Definitely. You're the only person that has ever figured that out.
Yeah.
Until you go online.
I wonder how much time like a developer puts into creating those systems and then thinking that they've like literally thought of every single scenario, and then how long it takes for someone else to completely just break that.
That's gotta be disheartening. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's funny because the other side of emergent gameplay is kind of this idea of the dominant strategy that comes out, especially in multiplayer games, right? So like that is a form of emergent gameplay, but that's kind of a bad form of emergent gameplay. Like ideally you want emergent gameplay to be something emerges that is good and beneficial and improves your game, but sometimes what emerges out of the systems that you've created is a hack or a strategy that people use to totally dominate and abuse the game and get ahead that way. So that's when I'm sure when that happens, that's probably disappointing because then you have to balance your game a little bit better.
But I mean, in that case, emergent, like at least with multiplayer games, like that's actually the perfect way of making a game emergent, because what happens if you put two people in a room? I've seen so many cases where someone almost dies. I saw a video of Escape from Tarkov the other day where someone almost died and then he started shaking his head, and then his adversary also just like stood there staring at him. And then he had the time to pull out his gun and shoot the guy. But it's like, you never really know what's going to happen when you encounter another player. You know what you think is going to happen because everyone's trying to shoot each other.
Well, you can't script really people. Know. You can't exactly. You can make an AI that is trying to make random choices, but when you're actually playing against other people, then you have to deal with actual psychology because people are weird and people make weird choices.
Yeah, so that's one of the ultimate ways of adding emergence. But now the question here, actually I think I want to leave the question for a little later. I also want to give an example of so I've been playing a lot of Sea of Thieves for the past few weeks, and I tend to like to just go in alone, and it's a really bad way of trying to make progress because you're very vulnerable. But I remember spawning in and seeing a ship on the horizon. So I was like, okay, I don't want to get attacked while I'm doing my mission. So I'm just going to go up to that ship and say hello. And as I went to them, one of the AI ships spawns and starts attacking them, and they basically defeat it. And I don't know if they saw me coming, but they just beelined straight to their the island that they wanted to be at. So I took the loot from the other skeleton, and then I literally brought it over to those guys, and I was like, hey,
you dropped this. Here you go.
You dropped this. Here's a peace treaty. Please don't kill me. And a lot of the times they do kill you, but these guys were like, oh, that's super nice of you. We'll keep an eye out for you on the seas. But it's that's one of the really cool things about multiplayer games that just automatically add emergence.
So do you think then there's a particular genre that lends itself better to emergent gameplay than others, or is it something that you can find in lots of genres? Because it seems to me like most of the emergent gameplay I've encountered has actually been in kind of open world games, but then you're talking about it's also pretty common in multiplayer games. Do you think that there's a particular genre that does it better than others, or is it something that we can find in all kinds of game genres?
So I think multiplayer, it's just a symptomatic thing about having
multiple people. Yeah.
But I feel like emergence generally comes through things with that have like puzzle elements to it.
Yeah.
And then with an exception to GTA, which is incredibly emergent. But I can't off the top of my head think of any other games besides like Far Cry and Legend of Zelda that really push beyond that level of emergence.
Yeah, so maybe it's less about the genre and more just about the tools that are available to the player and how well those stack on each other.
Yeah, because I mean the thing is in GTA, one of the big things about it is you're stealing cars and you're committing crimes. So they had to make basically being a repeat offender fun.
Doing some crime.
So like they have to make the concept of doing that thing like different every single time. So the AI can act in different ways.
Yeah.
But if like one of the big criticisms that I've heard from Cyberpunk is the fact that people just don't react to you.
Yeah.
When you start shooting a gun, they just like T-pose. But
it's everyone's going to be doing it in the future, don't you know? That's the new thing.
Yeah. So like that's the thing, right? Is if you compare those two, Cyberpunk is incredibly not emergent because the police just spawn directly on you. The civilians just hide and cower. They don't run. They don't try to retaliate. It's literally just always the same reaction.
Yeah.
But one of the big problems that I see with emergent gameplay is if you try to put it into any scenario. I'm going to use Overwatch for an example. So,
yeah, like
you know Overwatch, right?
Yeah, but like so let's talk about are there any downsides to emergent gameplay then?
Yeah. So one of the things is like for instance Overwatch, right? You've got ultimates and you've got special abilities. Now each of the ultimates can interact with each of the characters in a different way. Say for instance Genji has a blade that he can deflect things with, and Hanzo has that dragon arrow that he shoots out. But Genji can deflect the arrow at the right time.
So it gets really complicated. The developers did a lot of work.
That's the thing is every single ability and every single ultimate has an action or a reaction to another ability and another ultimate from every single other player. So when you add a new character, say for instance Sigma, who shoots people into the sky, who is allowed to get out of that little area of effect? Can they just dash out?
Because then you've got kind of like a loop going between like a rock paper scissors type of loop kind of thing, and then when you add someone else in there, it's like how do you fit them into that system you've already established?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's adding one character means that you have to reassess every single ability from every other character in the game.
And then you have players who have gotten used to that ability or who really like that ability and may not want to have that changed or given up or something. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're not necessarily changing the ability, you're just changing the way that the ability can affect in that one scenario. But the problem is you're not thinking of just the balance side. It's like how do you code this stuff?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you have to completely create a new bunch of code purely just to have one interaction work with the other.
Yeah, or you have to nerf somebody, because then if you make one person vulnerable to too many other people, but not enough, this other character isn't vulnerable to enough people, then yeah.
But I was busy trying to do some procedural animation stuff recently, like have a little spider that can just like walk on any surface, and it worked. Like I had the plane and I had the spider working, but then the moment he stepped on uneven surface, he'd just like go flying in the like most hilarious way possible, because his feet are still trying to stay on the ground. So it's like he was just like squirming to try find his position in the world while in the air, and I didn't have him connected to gravity, so it was just the most hilarious thing. But the problem is having these systems all linking up to each other can be incredibly difficult. So it's like the more things you have interacting, the more likely you have, the higher likelihood you have of getting weird bugs or game breaking bugs. So that's actually like a lot of work for developers to make those. So I feel like the games that we have, we should appreciate the emergence. But then if a game comes out that isn't particularly emergent, it's
how much can we reasonably expect that? And I think like in AAA titles, like in Cyberpunk, I think there's a reasonable expectation there that should have more systems that interact. But in smaller games, maybe let's be gentle with our expectations.
It's that one thing of you want everyone wants a completely interactive game.
Yeah. But there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a perfect open world game, because actually that wouldn't be any fun, because that would just be life.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't have a game that perfectly simulates life, because it would be boring.
Yeah, but yeah, so it all depends on, I mean, how much you're willing to put in, but like how much it also affects the gameplay. Does the emergence gameplay actually have an effect on your game, or is it just like an interaction for the sake of being an interaction?
Yeah. All right.
To me,
so,
it's like.
Oh, sorry. You want to finish?
I just wanted to say it's crazy that Breath of the Wild actually exists with all its systems and things. Because the things that I've seen, I've never played it, but the things that I've seen from it, it looks insane.
If I ever don't want to use my Switch, I'll let you borrow it. But I am pretty attached to it, so there's not a high chance of that happening. I was just going to say, though, to sort of sum up and conclude, because we're kind of running out of time here.
Yeah.
I think what's kind of the takeaway of, if you're a developer or if you're a prospective developer, what is the takeaway here of emergent gameplay? Is it something that you should aim for, or is it more about just crafting good mechanics and then letting that happen organically?
Yeah. It's a difficult thing. I think for me, it would be a case of being aware of the types of emergence that you would want ahead of time, because you need to know what you can make flexible and what you can't. And it's basically, before you think of the game, just think of what type of emergent gameplay do you want. And if it doesn't really fit the bill, you just kick it. You just don't need to put it in.
I think also if emergent gameplay is something that you're aiming for, obviously the most critical part about your development process is going to be play testing. Like, just the more people you can get playing it, the more things that you can have people experimenting with, the more you're going to be able to have an understanding of what those systems are and what people actually do with those systems. Because you might give a player a tool and then they use it in a completely unexpected way, which might give you more ideas for how to make that tool interactive with other mechanics. So so that's emergent gameplay. It's a pretty cool topic. We like it a lot. So what do you think? Do you think if you guys have any other examples of games that you think are really emergent, or times when you made sort of your own fun within a game, go ahead and leave us a comment. Or if you have any ideas for future topics, we've got kind of some loose ideas for topics coming up, right?
Yeah, we've got a few.
And how often can they expect to see us?
So we're going to be doing, I guess it's good to give a bit of an overview of our plans. So it's going to be bi-monthly, where Cory and I am just going to sit and talk like this. But you can also look forward to every other week us sitting down with other industry professional, like a sound designer or a concept artist, and we'll be talking to them and finding out a bit about their lives and the types of things that they do, and
what a life in the industry actually looks like, what you can actually expect from working in game development. So all right,
cool.
Bye everyone.
Thank you guys.
We'll see you next time.